Hello, my name is Angela Bellin, and I'm a PhD student in the Department of Occupational Therapy and Occupational Science at Towson University. Today, I would like to share with you my term analysis on occupational possibilities. I hope that you enjoy my presentation. Here are the objectives of this presentation. I'll define occupational possibilities, situate it within occupational justice, highlight key influential authors, as well as provide an example viewing the occupational possibilities associated with breastfeeding and new mothers. So, what is occupational possibilities and where did this term come from? The term is coined by Debbie Laliberte Rudman, initially from her PhD scholarly work when studying the discursive environment and the elderly. She continued to build this concept over time and expanded this term, which was eventually applied more as a framework or as a way in which to analyze occupations, not just for individuals, but also communities and larger populations. Occupational possibilities is the ways and types of doing considered ideal and possible within a socio-historical context. A little context for occupational possibilities and a few additional terms. Politicized occupation shows that what people do is shaped by societal power structures and that occupations can support wellness and justice, or it can be a mechanism to reinforce injustice. Hegemony is when certain ideas or values become so dominant that they feel natural or just the way things should be. Discourse, or the discursive environment, is a system of power that shapes what is considered normal or possible. It enforces and influences which occupations are available to different people. I've also provided a picture example here regarding how the hegemonic and discursive environment shape occupational possibilities. So just as a brief example to set the stage for our example, below involves motherhood. The hegemonic ideal of motherhood is that what makes a good mother, an ideal mother in Western American society, is one that she is fulfilled, that she self-sacrifices for her child. This feels right. It doesn't feel forced. It's just what is. The discursive environment then can be seen in narratives about good mothers, cultural messages, general conversations, advertising photos of happy, smiling, calm, often Caucasian women and their babies in ads saying, "I only want what's best for my baby," or narratives saying, "I would give up anything to make sure my baby is taken care of, so buy our car seat," or something. This environment can also be seen in government policy shifts or the lack of paid leave, which assumes mothers work part-time or limits the ability to return to work based on a self-sacrificing mother culture. The self-sacrificing mother would not want to return to work. That reinforces this overall hegemonic ideal of the self-sacrificing mother. The occupational possibilities effect then can be that mothers cannot even imagine or pursue, for instance, setting boundaries or choosing roles that would prioritize herself over her child because the underlying environment limits what is possible. In turn, when some parents do not have these choices and goes against these overall hegemonic ideals and what is portrayed in the discursive environment, it creates for some to have the possibility to have the resources and wealth support to make these self-sacrificing choices and marginalize others when they do not have those choices. So the middle class mother, the upper middle class mother, with resources may be able to enact the self-sacrificing ideal, whereas a low-income mother may be blamed for working multiple jobs or criticized for putting her child in daycare all day, even though she does not necessarily have an alternative. So the discursive produces unequal occupational possibilities, unequal judgments, or conditions. Occupational possibilities was first explored by Rudman in 2005 through discourse analysis on aging. It's since become a framework for understanding how the sociocultural and political forces shape opportunities for different groups. For example, Oplin Sternsen examined the occupational possibilities for Norwegian immigrant children and how their school performances was limited by the roles and futures which they felt were available to them. The concept was applied also to Latino adolescent boys in low socioeconomic neighborhoods, which examined how the environment influenced the occupational possibilities for them and can contribute towards gang participation. Moving beyond occupational possibilities to population groups, the concept has been expanded towards being a lens in which public health and city planning organizations or governments can be informed and advocate for broader equity. So Towson and Wilcock presented their framework, which identified forms of occupational injustices in 2004, which stated that people have occupational rights. Injustices occur when those structures restrict meaningful or health-supporting occupations. Justice depends on whether people have fair access to opportunities. Occupational Possibilities extends this justice conversation, focusing on the socio-political conditions shaping those rights and how the discursive environment shapes what's even possible to exist in the first place. In the early 1990s, occupational science was largely framed as a neutral, individualistic, and apolitical discipline focusing on person-environment models without deeply examining power, society, or cultural influence on a foundational level. By the early 2000s, the field began shifting towards a more critical paradigm. The rise of the term occupational possibilities reflects this overall shift. It signals a move away from viewing occupation as simply an individual choice and towards understanding how broader structures shape what people can and cannot do. In a search, Occupational Possibilities, in the Journal of Occupational Science, a total of 132 articles came up starting in the year 2005 when the term emerged to the present year in 2025. You can see the term only had 8 articles published. Most of them were authored by Rudman the first 5 years or co-authored. Over the next 10 years, however, the term rapidly gained popularity with 94 articles being published during this time, and that's a pretty huge jump. Over the past 3 years, there have already been 30 articles published, so it appears as if it is not expanding maybe at the rapid rate in which it did from the first 5 years to the next 10. However, it remains steady and it does continue to grow. Here in a search for occupational possibilities in various OT journals, you can see the prevalence of the term by region. 10 articles were published in AJOT in between the years 2005 and 2025, 17 in the Canadian Journal of Occupational Therapy, and 23 articles in the Scandinavian Journal of Occupational Therapy. My position is that although the term occupational possibilities is not widely used outside of occupational science and occupational therapy yet, it has the potential for a wider interdisciplinary reach. For example, Rudman and Aldrich in 2021 described the challenges older job seekers face due to occupational marginalization and referred to the different occupational possibilities of these individuals. They do not specifically use these terms. However, it was published in the Journal of Aging and not in an occupational science or OT journal. I see potential to grow the use of this term also in the OT literature and has the potential to help occupational therapists see not just individual deficits, but also the broader factors limiting what a patient, student, or client can even attempt. The pitfall, however, is that it is a more theoretical concept and it's hard to see something from this broader lens. I use the saying, you can't see the forest for the trees, meaning that when you focus on the detail or you're in the forest and you're looking at the trees, you can fail to see the larger picture. It is this loss of perspective that happens. And so I find the term occupational possibilities can be a little abstract in this way, and it's difficult to see the forest, so to speak, even when you are trained to know that it exists, which speaks to the influence of the socio-political culture. A specific way to explore occupational possibilities is through the public health campaign slogan, "Breast is Best," which is a widely recognized phrase used to promote breastfeeding. The campaign began in the late 1990s, introduced by the World Health Organization, with the goal of reversing declining breastfeeding rates and normalizing breastfeeding. Advocacy groups using this slogan emphasize the reported health benefits for both infants and mothers and presents breastfeeding as the natural or intended way for a mother to feed her baby. Around the same time, the World Health Organization also implemented the baby friendly hospitals policy, which prioritized breastfeeding in hospital systems and promotes the idea that human milk through direct breastfeeding is the optimal way for human infants to be nurtured and nourished. Together, the slogan and the policy create the discursive environment, which shapes what is viewed as ideal or possible for new mothers, illustrating how occupational possibilities are influenced by socio political and cultural messages. So, looking at this example below, all of these benefits sound great, right? The hegemonic influences really promote what is natural, what is ideal, what is right. The discourse here includes the hospital systems implementing protected breastfeeding windows where formula is not offered for at least 48 hours and eliminating newborn nurseries so mom and baby can stay together unless absolutely necessary. Even as I say it, it might sound like the most ideal choice. Other parts of the discourse include breastfeeding and breast milk commonly being referred to as liquid gold, mothers talking to each other, and physicians telling mothers that breastfeeding will help them lose baby weight faster, protect against postpartum depression, and help them bond with their baby right away. The photos below were taken from a Google image search on breastfeeding. So the visual messages here show calm, pleasant, they are very often Caucasian, two-parent households, middle to upper class smiling women with really healthy, robust babies. So this is how breastfeeding is portrayed in the media. Breastfed babies and lactating moms are portrayed as a superhuman duo, and that's the best thing for everyone, right? These policies were implemented to enforce that discourse, reflecting underlying hegemonic ideals around motherhood in general. But if we step back and consider the forest, so to speak, referencing our previous example, when we examine the different occupational possibilities during the neonatal period, what is possible for some is not always possible for all. This can lead to occupational injustices. For example, if a baby is born premature or very sick, they often need to stay in the NICU, creating physical separation between mother and infant. Other occupational possibilities differences include mothers who are using surrogacy and will not be lactating, mothers who do not have the time, health, money, partner support. All of these and more factors lead to different occupational possibilities for new mothers. Additionally, there are many infant factors which limit breastfeeding as the optimal choice. However, because of these different occupational possibilities seen through the discursive environment, they create feelings of being suboptimal or less than when unable to live up to this idealized standard. As we wrap up, the main message of this presentation is that occupational possibilities helps us to see occupation not as an individual choice, but as something shaped by powerful social, political, and historical forces. Since its introduction by Debbie Laliberte Rudman, the term has grown alongside a broader shift in occupational science, from viewing occupation as neutral and apolitical to recognizing how discourse, hegemony, and structural conditions shape what people are allowed, enabled, or even imagine themselves doing. We saw how occupational possibilities helps illuminate inequities across diverse groups. So ultimately, this concept expands the occupational justice conversation by helping us look beyond the person to the systems that shape opportunity. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.